Welcome to Double Dose of Raw Talk Podcast, your weekly dose of many discussions and opinions, a show where we get comfortable being uncomfortable. And remember, no topic is off limits. Now let's talk about it.
Thank you so much.
I'm drinking tea because my voice is coming back.
No, I definitely understand.
I suffered so much. Like, I don't know how singers do it, or like full-time podcasters, or like TV hosts. If something goes wrong with their voice, I just don't know.
I feel like their career is over. It's like, well, what do you do?
That's exactly how I feel. Like, I've only been like this for a month, and this is not like my only, career path, but it's been like a challenge even with what I do at my job. So it like the whole not having a voice just like really it made me take a hit. So it's been a learning experience, this whole thing. But here we are. So welcome back everyone to another week and another episode on Double Dose of Raw Talk, a podcast. I am your host, Miss D, and today I am very excited to have this guest on today's episode. Because straight up from the opening, let's just say it, Double Dose of Raw Talk. Raw talk. If you've been a loyal listener, but if you are a new listener, on this platform, we always get comfortable being uncomfortable and no topic is ever off limits. And today we have an author here with us, someone who has reached out, and thank God she did, because she shared her book, her gems, coming out real soon, right? It's like a couple of days. Well, by the time this airs, I believe it's the next day. It's the next day that your book is releasing. So
yes,
I'm excited for that. But most importantly, it's the concept that we bring to this platform, and so I'm just so happy that that's exactly who this guest is. So I'm going to open the mic for my guest to introduce herself and introduce the book that we are definitely going to reference today. Because it wouldn't be Raw Talk if we didn't. Because your favorite host definitely read it, and we're gonna dive right in. So my dear guest, welcome, and please introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for allowing me on the platform and to be a talker for my book. I'm author Marianna Gurrola. I'm born and raised here in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm a native here, and my book that is coming out February 5th, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 8 p.m. or Mountain Standard, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, is a letter to the younger me. Thank you. I'm super excited.
I love it. So, okay, off the bat, right? Before we dive into our segments and, my traditional raw mess of the week, which I'll tell you what that's about, right?
Ooh, I'm excited.
Yeah. I just want to say that, for one, I think the idea to write a letter to a younger version of you who once was and lived, and you're able to retell a story about that, it's just so amazing because we talk so much in life. I know I have recently. I've gone to conferences of self-mastery, of manifestations, so much that has helped me, right? I want to say in at least the last year and a half to 2 years. And one of the things we always hear people talk about is tapping into younger you, tapping into that person that once was,
Yes.
I just finished my final session with my food and health coach, and so much was discovered just in that journey. But one of the things she would always tell me is, I need you to talk to Deicita, the younger you,
Yeah.
And we don't realize how important that is to go back to that person. We don't realize how important it is that once you start seeing a lot of things that are surfacing and resurfacing, the older we get and the more we experience in life, just how important it is to tap into that younger you and be able to go back to who that person was and be able to talk to that person. And I think that's where your book has truly set a tone for me when I read it, because it's like, how often do we do that? We don't. I'm 36 years old, and only now in like the recent years, couple of years, I've decided to really tap into who I was, the things I experienced as a child, the things I experienced as a teenager, and realizing how that did have an impact to where my life led and who I am today. And your transparency on that is truly amazing and inspiring. And I really hope my listeners go and support and get a copy of this book, because part of your book, and I'm going to disclose this part, is you kind of give us homework. And that was even more amazing. I wrote an ebook about a piece of a journey of mine, and I gave some tips and stuff, but I didn't give people that much of a homework because that wasn't my intent. However, when I read someone who gives me a homework to do relevant to what their journey is, it really tells me that that writer, that person who's speaking to me through those words, really wants me to follow in their journey, not just with some tips, not just with some, and listen, I'm not dogging out my own ebook. I'm just saying your intent and your purpose, and that truly served this purpose with me. And I wanted to give you those flowers to you, because the journal's right here on my sofa. After I read your book, it was like, I need to go back to journaling one more time this week, because I think I need to start writing to me, to who I was at age, I want to say something that happened to me at age 10, 11, 12, and talk to that person, because certain things are relevant to how they unfolded. So kudos to you. Everything off the bat, let me just announce, will be in the show notes, as many links as possible, so you guys can follow Marianna and you guys can definitely go support. And again, I'm excited. So we're going to just dive right into this week's segment, and we're definitely going to dive into the book itself. But let me go to my notes for raw mess of the week. So on this show, we always talk about a raw mess of the week, right? There's always something going on in the world, you know, social media, publicity, public figures, the celebrities. Last week, I actually tackled a little conversation with Marcy, the host of Comadreando podcast. She is an amazing Latina single mother as well, and just true advocate for community and for her child. And we talked a little bit about just the concept of single parenting, and we talked a little bit about Kanye West and Kim Kardashian and this whole debacle over their child Chicago's birthday and not being invited, or how does that look, right? And so we talked a little bit about just our stance as to, you know, always doing for our kids, right? But at some point, we also have to do for ourselves. And we also have to put a little bit of boundaries, even if that means that you're not invited to your child's own
It's very important to have boundaries, especially in co-parenting and any parenting situation.
Yes, exactly. So I wanted to explore this topic a little bit more, but in a different view. And I've talked about this gentleman several times on this show because I still can't figure him out. And recently came out, by recently, I mean a couple of hours ago, I think, Nick Cannon just lost a son, and he is now having another child. He just had a gender reveal that he's having another child yet with someone else. And several episodes ago, I actually had a guest on the show, RC, from Introverted Intuition podcast. And we definitely discussed Nick Cannon. One of the things RC said was, you know, he doesn't agree with this movement of, you know, Nick Cannon thinking that he could just have children and keep having children and keep having children, because RC feels, and I do know plenty of men who do feel this way, I want to be able to raise my children. I want to be able to be there for all my children, and hopefully be able to have that in one home. And I happen to know plenty of men, even at my age of 30 something years old, who don't have kids, who still are aiming for that, and who have been cautious than to just go around just having babies left and right? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I am really now, and I'm gonna get a little messy here, because society doesn't hold back to criticize a woman who has children
Absolutely not.
left and right from different partners, or just a bunch of children, right? Regardless of how many partners. And it's not about just throwing shade at him. It's getting messy in the sense of, is this man not allowed to have an intervention of some form? Are we not allowed to say, sir, put the brakes a little bit, pump it just a little bit, like just slow down just a tad? Like, mentally, are you really okay? You just lost a child. Like, we hear a lot of society saying, well, women are not the only ones who go to postpartum. Dads also need paternity leave, right? So
absolutely,
in the essence of wellness to this man who's a dad to multiple children, is there no one that can intervene a little bit? It's not about whether you have the money to have all these kids. Where is your time?
Where's your time
to have all these kids?
Yes.
Chime in a little bit, Marianna. Tell me your thoughts. Like, am I wrong here? Like, where are
we?
No,
you're not wrong. You touched on so many points that just even in my co-parenting situation with my daughter's father, where, you know, he has money.
And, my daughter's spoiled and she has a little bit of everything. But the one thing that he can't seem to prioritize is time. So when I look at someone like Nick Cannon and who's having kids and stuff, the first thought I thought was, well, you were planning this. You knew that your son was passing away and stuff. So it was like, okay, 3 months, you have a gender reveal or however many months that she is. It's like you were kind of planning for a backup child, and if I was the mother who lost my child, I would feel some type of way. Just knowing me personally going through postpartum, it's like, okay, well, my kid doesn't matter anymore. You have a replacement child. That's honestly how I would feel. And it's so sad because I agree that it's not about how much money you have to take care of all these kids. It's about how much time do you have to give to them. Nick Cannon is very successful. He has, his show Wildin Now. He hosts a lot of shows and does a lot of things and stuff and whatever and whatnot. But are you really separating your time to give quality time to these kids? Not just time or I'm taking everyone as a bunch, but do you have individual quality time to, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and go out and watch a movie. Sit back and let's go do something. What are you doing? In the household as a parent, as a single parent myself, mother or father, the number one thing that I really love that I didn't get growing up that I'm implementing in my household, how the way I raise my child is asking questions and allowing my kid to see when I ask questions that my reactions, my receptions are very open. And I really think that he should spend more time, with his kids asking, hey, how's your day? What are you doing? What is new that is going on? What new stuff do you like? Hey, this child's name, what do they like? What are their favorite colors? What sports are they in? Do you really know every single child like that?
Amen to that part.
Yeah, so it's like
Yes.
you really know every single child. These women, that they're great mothers, or else you wouldn't have had kids with them. They know their child, they know that you have the money, but do you really spend quality time to get to know your child? And at some point, because kids grow up so fast, me just being 24 and having my daughter and she's only 3, I'm like, oh my goodness, I felt like I was pregnant yesterday. Where did the time go? She's already 3.
Right.
I'm just like, he's going to look back and he's going to be like, dang, like I didn't spend enough time with my kid. Or they may be like, where were you?
Absolutely.
Are you taking family pictures with every single one of these families?
Lord.
Are you taking individual? Are y'all getting together on Thanksgiving at one big house and spending like sister wives? Like, I don't dishonor or don't like feel some type of way about how the way he moves in his lifestyle with his relationships and how the way he does things and dabbles with women, no problem. But when it comes to a home and it comes to you parenting and being a parent, I mean, we can all sit there and say there's no right or wrong way to parenting, but realistically, there's common sense when it comes to parenting. And to me, it just don't make no sense how you have all these kids when you don't have time for them. You just don't.
I'm gonna give another dose on that one. Okay. And another dose of messiness. Okay. 2 of them. How about that? I'm gonna make it a double dose.
I'm ready for it.
First of
I'm
all,
ready for this.
In the good faith of Mariah, my dear Mimi, I would have been a long time ago been like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, I need to keep my kids away from you at this point. And it's not to say that he's a bad father. It's just now I have to question your decisions and in your eagerness to become a father over and over and over again. Me as one of the mothers, I will question that. Here's the double one. Here's the double one. You were not the only one who just lost the baby. You have children who are in grade school who lost a sibling. And so they're also coping with that loss. And here you go, because you've made this executive decision because of whatever reason, your health, and listen, I empathize with him, right? You've decided you're going to continue having these. If this gender reveal is happening, that means this woman is at least 4 months. His child just passed away like a month and a half ago, 2 months at most. To your point, you already knew there's another child coming. And so how is it that you're sitting down and having these conversations with your older children? How is it that you are explaining this to them? It doesn't just happen to you. You are clearly a man who does your best to bring all your children together. And that's great that you're trying that. I'm still going to question, like you said, do you make time for them individually? Do you know them? Do you really, really know them? Not just send me your Christmas list. Like, do you really know them, right? But then also becomes a factor of, do you even know how to help them cope with all these changes in their life? They're not even fully mourning the loss of the sibling that I know you have family pictures with, which means they know they had a sibling who they just lost. So now they're having to get ready to welcome another one. If a parent, most of the time, who has suffered that type of a loss, let's just face it, let's put it all the way raw here. Plenty of moms suffer miscarriages, and then they're not necessarily immediately ready to have another child right after that.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes, it's really traumatizing.
It's traumatizing.
It really is.
So now think of it that way. There was an actual sibling, an actual child here. And now all of a sudden these kids are supposed to kind of like still mourn, still cope with that loss, but still try to find a balance and being excited to welcome another one. And yes, I am going to add to your point, and very well taken. I don't care if he doesn't have any other ties with that woman who also lost her child that she shared with him. I would feel some type of way that we just lost our child and suddenly here you are with another woman pregnant. And it just raises so many questions for me.
A lot of red flags.
So
a
many.
lot. And another thing that needs to be questioned is what is the real point? Are you trying to leave a legacy? Because if it is, what real legacy are you leaving by abandoning that time in between every single child and then them being so close? Like what message? Because I feel like if you're trying to leave a legacy as a father, as a male, trying to make your last name live on forever, there has to be a mission behind that. What are you trying to leave behind? That dad was here, dad was always present, dad gave quality time, dad was the man of the house, dad took care of things. What is the message? Because the message that they see is my dad makes, money. He was an actor, he was a producer, he was this and that, but dad was gone all the time. I had to, split time, make time for here. Cause then now you're putting the mothers, and I kind of question, like, what are these women like discussing, or what are they thinking themselves? Or, like you said about Mariah, like I have to question your intentions with these other women. And if I'm allowing my kid to be around these other women, because now I have so many women I have to trust with my child if they're spending time in other households or, with these other women and stuff, and it's bad enough that we live in a world where we can't always trust everyone, but to live in a world where we have to learn that trust as a mother, as a woman, and just not feel like, oh, well, you just started me, now you're moving on to the next woman. I can't feel better about that because I knew the situation, and whatever the case may be. There's a lot of red flags when it comes on to that, because I just know me and how the way I was after postpartum and how my situation is with my daughter's father. And even now to this day, if I felt like if a woman that he was involved with, if she didn't like me, if she didn't respect me, I didn't want my child around her, because then I'm like, she's going to talk about, me to my child, or she's not going to respect me, or she's not going to, like my child and respect my child. So those are all things and red flags that definitely need to be discussed or questioned by someone close to him.
Right. I want to bring, before we dive right in, I appreciate you even being transparent on that. Because while I have taken a lot of pride as a co-parent, the mom where the child lives, in having, and I've built a great relationship with his stepmother. There are still often those times, right? That are definitely testing. And listen, he's 14, which I've surpassed a lot of those tougher times when they're younger. So I totally understand and feel for people who have unique situations. And listen, every story is different, right? But it's not to say that it stops. It's not to say that it gets any easier. I would love to think that or believe that. No. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's as messy as I'm going to get with poor Nick and Mimi and the kids. And I'm going to be honest, I don't really know all the other baby mama's names. I'm so sorry.
I don't either.
There's just too many. There's a new one now. I briefly saw the name and I just don't know the names. But great conversation and great way to open up our next segment. And this is where we're really going to dive into the book. So on this segment of As Raw as It Gets, write your truth. Okay? So, telling your story and the people who didn't like it. I just want to go right into it. I want to know, in writing the story, we're going to dive into the story itself, but in writing this story, in your transparency, for one, did you change any names?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
yes. I changed my daughter's father's name. I changed my current boyfriend's name in the book.
Okay.
And then I changed my own biological father's name because
Okay.
he's the type to come back and sue me.
Oh,
So
he will. Okay, so this is why we ask these questions, right? I want to make
yeah.
sure that we just put this out there. Again, because I am one that I speak a lot here, and so I never like to incriminate anyone, so I don't say
Yeah.
people's names. At most, I give one person a nickname, and this is definitely something that as a writer also, but for anyone who's aspiring to write your own story, please keep this in mind. This is very important unless you're going to have people sign documents, which if you're going to speak your truth, probably people won't want to sign papers.
Just make up a name and change the characteristic a little bit.
Absolutely. So let's just throw that out there. Okay. So the people who didn't like this or who knew you were on this journey and didn't like the idea, did you experience that from anybody at all whatsoever?
You know what? I feel like when I told everyone that I was going to write a book, I feel like it's one of those things like, oh yeah, okay. Cause like, it's like, well, who do I know that's written a book? And so I feel like a lot of people just didn't believe it. And I feel like a lot of people that do read the book or buy the book are going to be more so nosy to see, well, did she mention me? Because I was a little mean to her, or, we had some beef and stuff like that. So, when writing or becoming a writer, you always have that cliffhanger leaving your audience there, for people who want to be nosy because they want to see what you write about. So I would say the only person that I feel like won't like the context or could self-incriminate themselves would be my father. Yeah, but other than that, no one knows, no one else doesn't, not like the idea about me writing.
Amazing.
They're actually really excited. So it's a really fun chapter for me.
Amazing. All right. I want to dive a little deeper.
Okay.
And in this question, I'll tell you why this question is coming up. Does the truth truly hurt? But I'm asking the question for you, like writing it, actually writing your experience.
Yes.
Like how did that hurt happen for you, and how did you get through it?
You know what? A lot of the nights that I spent writing, I cried, because you're writing and I had to get in a mode where I had to relive these moments, and I mentioned in my book because I wasn't only a victim, I was the villain too. And so I had to relive these moments and realize that I was the victim in a lot of these situations. And by reliving those, you have, that self-doubt or, well, man, is this really going to come across good or is it going to come across bad? And it was just really sad reliving the moments where I realized that, well, this was wrong. And was I really in love? And could this hurt this person? Because the last thing I want to do is tell my truth and hurt somebody that I know.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like I have to heal in my own way. And by writing this book, it helped me heal so much. It was really hurtful going back and just reliving the whole situation in time when with my daughter's father and just reliving how the way he treated me. And then in chapter 3 when I talk about my parenting chapter and stuff, and everything for me starts, like you said, as a young kid and in the home. So you have to really step back and go into deepness as a child and be like, this is how I was raised, this is what I was taught, this is what it has changed me and adapted me over time and stuff into the adult that I am today. So it was really eye-opening, really realizing the situations when I was a kid that really reflected my writing now today in situations.
I want to dive into that one, that story of you as a child. Because so just to give a little background, if you would like to share with my audience, what your background is as far as your heritage goes.
Yes, I'm an Afro-Latina, so my mom is Black and my dad's Mexican.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a reason why I'm bringing this up on this show. I am Ecuadorian.
Okay.
Born and raised, here, but I always say I'm Ecuadorian, right? And being the experience that you noted, I know what experience I grew up with here, right? Realizing that a lot of things that were so common in my very Ecuadorian Latino culture, and I'm not going to shame anybody. It has taken a lot to be able to re-educate them on a lot of things. But realizing that a lot of things that seem so normal in the motherland, that when they immigrated over here, they brought it over here and it just seemed so normal. Certain verbiage use, certain words, certain vocabulary, things like that. And realizing that there's more to the root of that. when it comes to our own countries, our own Latino countries, right?
Yeah.
The racism that has existed just
Yeah.
amongst our own little buckets of culture, and then amongst the culture itself, the heritage itself,
Yeah.
the colorism, things like that, right? To then come to this country, right? And then my parents have children here, and so we're now exposed to public schooling, and we're seeing people of all colors, people of all kinds, of all backgrounds, of all cultures. And we're starting to realize, oh, the teacher said we're not supposed to say this. Oh, that's not the right way to say that. Oh, that's not a good word. But I heard this over there, like, and we're clicking two and two together. One of the things that really outstood to me, and I said to myself, I think I've been in those situations. Can't pinpoint if it was with my own family or with the families of neighbors, right? But, when you said you realized what your Mexican side of the family was speaking of and how they were referencing about your mother, who's a Black woman, that
Mm-hmm.
was all the way raw and such a truthful
Yes,
moment. And I'm sure it was hurtful for you to relive that. But it
absolutely.
was just like hitting it right on target. Like you nailed it right in that moment, because it is part of your childhood. It's something that you lived, it's something that impacts you, and it's something that we should not just keep silent about. It we should be able to talk about these things and be able to re-educate our elders and say, hey, I know that maybe you've said that word in a form of endearment, but that's not really the right thing to say. Like, you just should not. Like, we're in different times and it's wrong. Um, how was that piece, that part of having to tell that part of the story for you?
It was really hard because I think that was the most pivotal moment in my entire life, because as a child, hearing, one side of your family, downplaying or degrading, half of who you are, is really hard, because at that point I had to make a decision. I love my mom. I love who I am in general. Now I have to step back, not like these people or feel some type of way because they don't truly love me for who I am and what I am, Afro Latina, and it was just really hard because I knew I was never enough. And that's the last thing you want a kid to feel like. They're not enough, that who they are isn't who they're supposed to be. And then you just leave them with a whole bunch of question marks, because that right there really set the path and the tone of the separation of me and my father's relationship, the separation of my relationship with that family, cousins, you know what I mean? And, you're so close with cousins and,
Mm-hmm.
kids in the family. So when you start separating them and adults start acting crazy and people get pulled along, the child always suffers.
Absolutely.
And that's what people seem to forget, that the child always suffers at the end of the day, regardless if it's parents, families, cousins, sisters, whatever. The
Mm-hmm.
child always suffers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was suffering. It was hurtful even to go back and, tell my mom and let her know, because she already knew it and she didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as a kid being put in the middle between two parents, it's like, well, who are you going to go with if we break up? Or who do you like more, or who does more for you,
Mm-hmm.
and who shows you that they love you more? Because my mom was the disciplinary, just like I am for my daughter and stuff. So it's like, well, mom did spank me, so I guess that makes her mean, right?
Right.
Like little things like that and stuff. And my mom, she didn't want to go around the family. So, and now I understood why. At that point I understood why, but it was always one of those things where it's like, well, you're not fun, you don't want to go anywhere, do anything. Well,
Mm-hmm.
now I see why. So that was really a key pivotal moment, because it changed relationships for me.
Mm-hmm.
It changed many relationships and how the way I was taken care of and raised after that. My dad didn't care to have a relationship with me. He saw me as my mom. And
Mm-hmm.
therefore, because he didn't like my mom, he was incapable of loving me as well. Even though I grew up in a two-parent household and he was physically there, me and my mom shared a room. Me and my mom
Mm.
shared a room from the time I was in sixth grade all the way up until 12th grade when I graduated high school. And then we finally moved out of the house. I went to college, and then she finally got on her own 2 feet and got her own apartment.
Mm-hmm.
But me and my mom, I shared a room with my mom like she was my sister for the longest time, because we didn't really care, have nothing to do with my dad. We were just stuck in a situation where we had to be there.
Right, right.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me to hear that, but it's also not so weird. Even though I didn't experience that growing up like with my parents, right? I will say there were things that I noticed just with my friends, the whole sharing of the rooms, or the fact that parents were not sleeping in the same room.
Oh, I've seen that a lot growing up, especially with my grandparents, and it's weird to me.
So that,
And that's why probably why I want like public display of affection, you know what I mean? So much for my partner, because I didn't see that with my parents, with my grandparents, or nothing.
Yeah.
So a lot of how the way I was raised when I was younger, and how the way I want love, how the way I want to experience it, receive it, and give it is totally different and taboo from how the way I seen it, you know, growing up. And when it came to friends too, you touched on a point that made me realize as well. I had a hard time when I was little having relationships with a lot of Latina friends because of the fact that when I came around, all they saw was I was Black. They didn't like, they knew I was mixed, but they saw that I was Black. So they were like, well, do you know Spanish? I was like, oh, yeah, I understand a little bit, you know, I know enough, but you know, not enough to hold a conversation. I understood, but I can't hold a conversation with you because a lot of my Mexican friends didn't, you know, their parents didn't speak English all the way. So that was another, you know, hard relationship for me and stuff like that. So
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for even like being transparent on that, because I think that's definitely something again that happens so often, and a lot of the time it still is happening. I know we're in different times, but it still is happening with a lot of cultures having differences, and our old school folks not really being open-minded to these things, or not being understanding to what was the norm. It's just not normal, and somebody should have taught you a long time ago that this is not okay. Like I get it. I get why this seemed normal to you. I get why you thought this was okay. I get why where this comes from. You've explained it to me over and over again, time and time again. Cool. I'm glad there's an understanding of that. But now I need you to understand that this means this, that this implies this. And so by you saying these things, this is really what you're saying. And you may offend someone. You may disrespect someone if you go around saying these things or doing these things. And again, this is a platform where if we're not keeping it raw, then it does not serve its purpose here, right? So I'm going to keep it 1,000% honest here, and I can only reference to my family, but rest assured there are plenty of families I've been raised around that I've seen it happen time and time again. I've seen the whole, you know, in my culture, if you're not light skin like this, you're very indigenous, or you're very Black, right? Because you're from so like your Afro-Latinos, we have that as well in Ecuador, right? Or we have your very indigenous folks, right? Or otherwise you're very, very light skinned, right? You're white passing, or however other terms you want to call it, right? And just in that culture alone of me growing up and understanding certain things, or even the times that I visited the motherland, you understand certain things as to why certain degrading terms are constantly being said to a certain group of people, or why when there's an argument, certain words are being spewed from one person to another. And it's very disturbing, and it's very inconsiderate to just humanity in itself. And I think that's where it touched me so much to hear you be so vulnerable on straight off the bat. You opened up with that. Let me just tell you, that's like a great way to hit a home run, because it's like, no, let's just get to the bottom of it all. Let's tap all the way in. And for you to be able to do that, it really put everything else into perspective as to the way the rest of your life had unfolded and everything else that you shared.
This show is sponsored by Queen's Infusions, a mompreneur-owned brand that creates terpenes and CBD-infused wellness products. Woman-owned, mompreneur, small business-owned, Queen's Infusions wellness products are homemade in small batches from locally sourced ingredients, and they are my absolute favorite. To mellow out, to chill, to enjoy the scent, the taste, ooh, you name it. You don't want to miss this. Go to the show notes, go to Queen's Infusions Etsy shop, and at checkout, use DDRT code for 20% off, courtesy of Double Dose of Raw Talk Podcast.
One more question in the as raw as it gets, because you touched on a lot of things. How come, and this may sound maybe ridiculous to some people to ask, but it's not. I always like to know the why. How come this was dedicated to your daughter?
You know what? This was dedicated to my daughter because I was just like, I don't know how life is going to be 5 years, 10 years from now and stuff. I always have these scared things, you know, thinking like, Am I going to be a good mom? Am I going to be successful? And she's going to look up to me. Is she going to love her dad more? When she gets to a certain age, is she going to want to move and live with her dad? And just wanting her, my story of just like wanting her so much and having a hard time trying to conceive her. And then when me and her dad were calling it quits, she magically appeared and stuff. And at that time, I was being very selfish. And I was like, nope, I'm not having an abortion. I'm going to keep it regardless of how our relationship is. I wanted to dedicate something to her because I felt like me writing this book was so true, so real. And the letters it was for a younger me to heal me, but it's really for the younger version or the younger self of her. And as she grows older and as she goes through things, I want her to be able to reflect back or take something from it and just be like, my mom went through that. How does she handle that? You know what I mean? Life isn't promised to everyone, to the next day. We just have to wake up every single day happy if we're here and stuff. And so I always wanted to make sure that I left her something of me that was just so true, so real, just so much love and heart put into it, and something that I actually was able to accomplish. And I feel very successful in because we always need something checked off to feel accomplished. And this book was definitely something, regardless if I make six figures, don't make six figures, have a college degree, don't have a college degree, whatever the case may be, I did this. It was real. And it was everything that I gave it. And that alone makes it successful. And I wanted to give her that.
Absolutely. Oh, a whole word on that. It is a whole word. I don't know if people truly get it. I don't know if people truly get it. And this is why I wanted you to speak on that piece, because I know my whys, right? And I have him, as my little broke best friend living in this house, and he's part of the why, but he's also, he creates all the whys as to what I do for him, right? And I don't, and it's not to say anybody who doesn't have a kid is missing the point. No, absolutely not. That's not what it means. It's just, I don't know if people truly understand why for some of us who are in the position of having a child, and when we say, I want to leave this piece of me for him or for her, there is truly a reason why. There is a whole story. I want to go into the double or nothing. Oversharing, shame or not. I want to talk about this because this is definitely a topic that has come up on my platform. I've talked about it on little joking moments of when I thought I was going to start my OnlyFans, but my 14-year-old wouldn't like that. Or just in general, just like how I've managed to produce a show and speak on my life and speak so freely on different experiences and different things about me, right? Sometimes speaking on his dad. I mean, a long time ago, I said, I would love to bring his dad on the show, and I had every intent to do so. And then things went left. And then I said, I can't bring him on because I am going to spaz out because we had a really tough moment these past few months. So I realize, like, in some cases, maybe I can't overshare on that, but in some things, is it really something to be ashamed of to overshare, or is it just truly me telling my truth, speaking truthfully as to who I am and what I do and what I'm about? One of the reasons why I created this platform was so I don't feel silenced, because for quite a good amount of years, in recent years, in different aspects of my life, I felt silent. I felt like I was being silenced. And still to this day, whether it's in jokes or laughing matters or what have you, ever so often I encounter folks who will make it feel like you're not supposed to have a voice, or nobody gives a shit, or nobody cares, right? And I strongly feel that you, as a human being and the person leading your own life, you're managing it, you're living it, you're experiencing it, you are entitled to decide what you share and what you don't, right? When it comes to being a writer and writing about your story, how was that experience and your decision in what you would fully disclose and what not to?
It was really hard because, especially in my love chapter, right after the introduction, it was so hard because it was like, I wanted to make sure I gave a book that resonated with everyone. You know what I mean? Regardless if you were in love, were not in love, had a kid, didn't have a kid, are successful, not successful, if you believe in some type of spiritual thing or not. I wanted my book from cover to cover to resonate with anyone, regardless if you read it cover to cover or jump to a chapter. It was really hard for me to figure out what really mattered, not only to give to other people, but what really mattered for that childhood me, what really showed my growth over time. And so I was like, you know what, if I'm going to write it and I'm going to be real and I'm going to tell my story, I just need to tell it all. Just at the end of the day, because it's me who needs healing. It's my story, my perspective, my point of view. And so, you know what, I'm going to give it my way and I'm going to give it my all. So I didn't leave anything out of my book at all.
Absolutely. You just actually
At all.
answered the following question that I had, because it was that part of it, the privacy issue, or the issue of when you're telling your side of the story, how does that look like for the other side? Because I do believe that when
Yeah.
we're telling our side of the story and we're involving that other person, even when we change the name, we're kind of saying that side too, whether it's from their perspective or mine. I'm talking about my perspective and what I saw. So
Yeah.
you may have had a different perspective, but this is what I lived and
This
this is
is
what
my
I saw.
story.
This is my story. Like
Yes.
we go
Yes.
back and forth here, but this is how it was for me, right?
Yes.
One more thing I want
Absolutely.
to hit off on this, not just only because you mentioned that you visited Ecuador, but also your experience
Yes.
that was for you, so
Oh my
holistic and
gosh.
such a beautiful journey that was. It brought me back to, I don't know if you ever read this book or saw the movie Eat, Pray, Love, when she goes through
Yeah.
the whole love situation and she just goes away, right? And
Yes.
she's going on this, like, I don't even, it's a whole full blown journey of just going to a completely different place, just being with nature, being with a different group of people, just really being with herself.
Changing your whole life. It's like having a whole new slate. It's
The
beautiful.
everything, just like,
I feel like everyone should do it at least
so
once.
like I hope to someday be able to do that. I've actually thought to myself, like, how would it look like for me to take a leave of absence from work? Maybe just like a month. Let me just go for like a month. If I have to use my PTO, I'll do 2 weeks straight. But let me just go for like a whole month. And I've actually said, like, I would love to go experience other parts of my motherland, because I just know just how beautiful nature is over there and how simplistic life is for those people, are very indigenous people. But your purpose in doing so, what was that purpose when you went to take that trip, and do you feel that you accomplished what your goal was when you did that for yourself?
So when I went to Ecuador, it was actually really emotional and really hard for me. So the opportunity came up. My godmother just asked me to go for, her health reasons. And I was like, yeah, sure. So when I just YouTube and Googled everything in Ecuador, because I did ayahuasca down there,
Mm-hmm.
um, I was just like, oh my gosh, like I'm a person who's barely done an edible, damn it. So I'm just like, oh my gosh, like this is a lot for me. I was like, I don't want to be tripping and seeing aliens like other people.
Right.
Like I was very, very scared. And just the thought of going to a whole nother country is just like, oh my gosh. Like, so I took the opportunity. It was like, yes, I'm gonna go. So I went. It was so beautiful. And it was so amazing. And there's words I can't describe how beautiful Ecuador is.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
underplayed. So I went to Ecuador. I went to Cuenca. We were on the mountains. The elevation was 8,000 feet.
Yeah.
Like I saw the clouds. That's how crazy it was.
Yeah.
And everything was very outside. So, we composted everything. The electricity, was really strict for how long it had to be on and everything. So going out there, seeing and meeting all these different people that I still talk to this day. I mean, there was doctors, there was producers, I mean, different people from different parts of the world to come together and all have the same mission of healing and health and what that looks like. I had to be on a strict diet for 2 weeks. So everything was gluten free,
Mm-hmm.
just very, very strict and vegan. So I went there, we did the ayahuasca. It was such an emotional, eye-opening
Mm-hmm.
experience. I feel like everyone should do ayahuasca once or twice. I definitely feel like I need to do it again. I don't feel like when I did my first ceremony, it was so amazing that I felt a part
Okay.
of the earth. Like I just felt like it was just words can't even describe what happened to me, but I saw and I felt the transformation.
Yeah.
And going into second ceremony, the same thing. But when I did my third ceremony, it was really hard for me. I feel like the third ceremony for me was the hardest just because of the fact that at that point I was physically, mentally, and emotionally drained. And then when we all got together in group to share our stories, excuse me, other people were like, sharing their stories. And it was my story good enough? Was my story strong enough? My experience, because you saw people, having good experience, some people having bad experiences. And it was like, was my experience lived up to par? Did I seriously go deep enough to experience everything that I needed to experience? So being out there for a week, I didn't accomplish everything that I wanted to. I definitely want to go back. I definitely feel like Mother Iowa has more for me. She has more in store for me. But she did tell me to write as many books as I can. And she did tell me that this book would be successful. And it was really important for me to make sure I included that in my book, because that's where I got my most spiritual healing from. That's where I got my most transformation from after healing. And when I was out there, I was writing this book and I was just like, you know what? Like, I feel so much better just talking to these people, having this opportunity, having this experience, be able to breathe air, listen to nature. Here it was just, there's just so many distractions here. So it was beautiful. Your home is beautiful.
I would love to go back, and I always say, like, I want to explore more areas there, because I actually know where Cuenca is not too far from Ambato. I'm from Ambato. So I am very familiar with the surroundings, but there's definitely a lot more for me to go and explore and continue to explore. But what I really wanted to touch base on, and again, those details were just so beautiful. I like when you explained what that was like, I was like, oh my God, I could like smell the mountains already. For a fact, people don't believe me when I say, oh no, like you breathe differently over there. As soon as you land,
my gosh, girl.
People don't believe me. Like, you do. You're like, literally go to the middle of the world. You will breathe different. Like,
I came home, girl, ready to run a marathon. Okay.
Yes,
like,
like
I feel like I
it's
could go.
serious. Yes. But what I do want to be able to emphasize on this is, people take for granted the concept of, hey, I'm going on vacation, right? I'm going to go to this Caribbean island, or I'm going to, this place for a wedding, and it's a destination wedding. Don't take for granted what Mother Nature gives you. Don't take for granted, like, if there's an excursion, let's say, where you're able to go into a rainforest, where you're able to go into Mother Nature, do it, and like really take in
take pictures, draw, reflect, journal,
everything.
Say what you go through, all of your senses, and literally write down or tell yourself what you see, what you feel, what you smell.
Yes.
I mean, I don't recommend tasting anything in the rainforest if you don't know what it is, but
my motto in life is don't knock it till you try it. So I mean, might as well. But there's a reason why I'm saying that. And I think it's because when you truly take out all the noise of our daily life and you pay attention to the wind, you pay attention to water, you pay attention to leaves, you pay attention to things like that, you are truly paying attention to the sound of your breathing and the sound of your heartbeat. I went to Jamaica when the pandemic was starting to, like, we were starting to reopen, and it was the first trip. Like, we just stopped working from home. We're getting back into the office. Everybody's messed up and whatever. And I jumped off of a cafe cliff, and I totally jumped the wrong way because I ended up with a massive bruise on my leg, and it hurt for a very long time. And people would see, I was still wearing shorts, it was still summer. People would see the bruise and they're like, what happened? And I'm over here smiling and I'm like, I jumped off a cliff in Jamaica, right? And they're like, but my God, that bruise is, I'm like, oh, well, I jumped wrong. I didn't jump with my legs straight. But what stays with me from doing that, what stays with me?
Courage.
It was the courage. It was getting over a certain level of fear. It was releasing everything out of my entire body, my soul, my mind, forgetting for 1 second any concern in the world, and just living in that moment, just jumping into waves off of a cliff, and just like being so liberated. And I remember as I was going to jump in, I just looked up and I just said, God, just help me swim back up. That's it. Right? That's all I said. Just help me swim back up. Because I want to feel this rush. I want to feel like I'm letting everything go on this trip, because that past 7 months have been so traumatizing. I worked in healthcare. We had lost so many family members. We had known so many people that had passed away. But it was more than that. There was so much deeper in that. Because of the pandemic, I was no longer dealing with. I was just so focused on the pandemic, I kind of suppressed certain things. And
absolutely,
on that trip, because there was not much to do due to the restrictions, there was more me time in the ocean. There was
And that's
more me
beautiful.
time laying, to tan, but really like listening to the wind, really breathing, really relaxing, knowing what it's like to not be at a, at a group party by the pool, at the bar, taking shots. It was actually me enjoying with nature, and it was being with nature and being with myself. And
Mhm.
I say that to say, whether you do take a moment to step away from your regular life, whether it looks like a week, 2 weeks, a month, what have you. Sometimes little things like that, sometimes that time away just for yourself, with yourself, really helps you with evolving. We know we're constantly evolving. We know we're constantly growing. Every single day there's a new experience, and it makes you a different person by the time it's the next day. But what happens when we really take that time away to love on ourselves and vacation with ourselves and be with ourselves is that we're truly connecting with ourselves. We truly are
Yes.
paying attention to me. Like, when does Daisy pay attention to Daisy? When does Mariana pay
Yes.
attention to Mariana? Like,
Yeah.
we have such a busy world. We're doing so much. We are
We're so distracted.
we're
You're so
mothers,
distracted.
there's just
Yes.
so much there. And so it's all part of, this concept of wellness that should really be taken seriously. Sure, there is, your
100%.
nutrients, and there's weight, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff in wellness, right? But there's that piece of the spiritual side, that, like you said, whether we believe in a God or not, but do you believe in you? Do you believe in what's deep
Yes.
inside you? Because it's really
You have
what.
to have faith in yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so I definitely wanted to shine light on that, in the double or nothing, because I know for some people it's like, it's oversharing, that doesn't quite fit for some people. You never know. You never know who.
Yes.
Someone might not even look at that as a sense of, do they even need it, until they read about it, until they hear about it, until they hear about something and
Absolutely.
they're like, well, wait a minute, this worked for her. What is this? Let me go look into this. Let me go see if maybe this is something I need. Maybe this is something I could use for me. Maybe I'm in this pivotal moment in my life where I need this extra push to just go really be with myself and really
Yeah.
heal. And so what I found to be with your book, and we could definitely close this segment out with this, is your book in itself, it really is a reflection not just of your life, but of the lives of many people within your age group. That, I always say I was 20 something years old. I was married, single mother, graduated college, divorced, probably all in 1 year. It all happened all in 1 year. And it was both one of the happiest times of my life, yet one of the saddest moments of my life. It was a
Yeah.
moment where I hit rock bottom and I had to come out of that. And that's where I was inspired to write a little bit of that ebook that I have, my journal to self-love. And so when I read your book, and your transparency, but most importantly, the rawness of it, I don't know if people understand how easy it is to be 20 something years old and be so quiet about our
Yeah.
truth. Because you're afraid of what people are going to say. You're afraid of being scrutinized even further. And the bravery that you have and the courage that you have to be at your young age. And listen, I'm 36, but I love being inspired by a younger group of people. I absolutely do.
Thank you.
Because it goes to show, for me, I have a 14-year-old. I need my 14-year-old to have a 30-something-year-old to look up to. I need my
Yeah.
14-year-old to have that mid-generation to look up to, if he can't look up to me for X, Y, Z reasons, probably because I'm his mama. But I need that. I need that in this world. And so for you to be able to lay it all out there at your very young age and still have had so much experience, it just goes to show that so many of our younger generation, our mid-age generation, are still silenced, and they do not have that voice, or they do not have the right pen, or maybe even the right keyboard to really tell their story. And I wanted to bring you on this show because, again, your story is amazing. I'm encouraging my listeners to please go support and purchase this book. But also, I do feel like your voice needs to be heard. I felt your voice in that story, in your book, but I wanted your voice to be heard a little bit more, and
Thank
in
you.
telling your story and the way that you did it. And so we're going to go into the overdose now. This is our last segment of the show. And in the overdose, this is where, we're closing out. And so we take this opportunity to talk about a quick rant on something we're completely over. It could be absolutely anything in your life, in society's life, in the world, or you could talk about something that you are completely overjoyed with. So you can go first, or I can go first. You let me know.
I'll go first. I'm really overjoyed, just like you said, just with having the opportunity of having, my voice heard and my book read. And I'll also share, something that I'm really sick of, which is, in the minority household, mainly for Black and Mexicans, mental health not being something that needs to be discussed and being told always what happens in this house stays in this house. I feel like nobody wants to have the hard conversations, even just within the household. And like I said, it starts in the household. So by telling them what happens in here stays in here, makes them feel like they don't have that voice to be able to reach out, branch out, network, ask for help, and ask those questions for other people that they may need it from.
Thank you for that. That is amazing.
Yes.
I'm actually going to say what I'm overjoyed with, but I do want to add to that because I will say this. I actually happened to have told my son not too long ago that he didn't need to be sharing the conversations he and I have with my siblings because I don't need them all up in my business. But I actually said that because, and I told my son this, you are actually very lucky that because of the way I grew up, where we don't talk about things and, we stay silent, or, that's your dad or that's your mom, no matter what, or, nobody apologizes to the children. Like, they don't have to be sorry. I always tell them you're very lucky because you don't get that from me. You never did. That's one of the promises I made with you. You didn't even know it. You were an infant. But I promised that where I needed to say I'm sorry, I would say I'm sorry. I promised that I would never lie to you. And so I expected for you to never lie to me. I promised that I would be the person who will always say I love you, because I don't doubt for 1 second my father loves me, but I can count probably on one hand in my 36 years of life how many times my father has told me he loves me. He has showed it, but he doesn't say it. And it goes all the way back to those generations, right? Because, we just don't say I love you. Like, why do I need to? I clothe you. I feed you. I provide a roof over
I
your
show
head.
you that I love you. You don't need to hear
enough,
it.
right? That's more than enough love. I made those promises with my son. And so where he is today, he knows he and I have the difficult conversations. He knows we talk about those things. And so I told them, I said, you don't need to share our conversations with my siblings because our conversations is ours. Like, that's sacred between me and you. If you feel that I'm not understanding you, you are supposed to be able to say, Mom, you're not understanding me. I need to talk to you. You're not hearing me out. And it is my job as your mother to not do what my parents did, but to sit here and be able to listen to you and understand where you're coming from. But with that being said, though, there are still a lot of households who do still practice this whole thing of, no, like, you're just like not supposed to. Or I'll even give you another dose on that. My mom always grew up saying she didn't have time to be depressed, or she didn't have time to be tired. And so that's also a stigma from a mental health standpoint. I do hope our society, in our Latino cultures, or all sorts of these cultures that I know are tuning in right now, please break away from that. Please talk and normalize these things. This is not okay. I see now so many adults, our age, my age group, your age group, they don't talk about things. They keep it so silent as well with themselves because that's how they grew up, believing that they're just not supposed to. And that is not healthy at all. So thank you for bringing that to light. Once again, guys, you definitely have to get that book. I will share just one moment of overjoy. I did put this on my social media, but I definitely wanted to announce it to the listeners. One of the things that I definitely wanted to commit to in these last 2 years and changes of my life has been to overcome certain fears that I have. I am a very proud, confident woman, but that doesn't mean I don't have some fears. And so one of those fears was, and I definitely realized that it was fear and I was purposely procrastinating, was me getting my license. And so I finally got my license. I finally passed my little road test. And so here I am, just ready now to overcome this fear of driving. And there's a reason to that fear. It was an experience from many, many years ago when I was practicing how to drive. I did not have the best teacher at the moment, and I got very, very nervous and I panicked and I was pregnant. And so I totally just like exited out that card and said, no, I'm not doing this. God forbid something happens to me. God forbid something happens to my kid. And to add to that, I had experienced a lot of people that I had known during a certain amount of time pass away from car accidents. So a lot of buildup happened to me with the whole concept of driving. But I wanted to commit this past year to getting over that fear and really putting myself and dedicate myself to get that license because of other goals that I have put in place, of other changes that I want to do for myself. And so I wanted to share that on an Overjoy and just say to give yourself grace and time and space to build yourself that courage. It doesn't make you any less confident. It doesn't mean you're less of a person. Just sometimes you just need a little bit of more time, but you need to still always be your own cheerleader and your own hype man. You really need to believe in yourself to be able to just do something as small as just getting behind a wheel and learning how to drive.
Amen.
You know, like, because it's not always the easiest thing for people to do. And I didn't realize that it was an actual fear that I had. And I'm actually over it. So I wanted to share that. And, you
That's
know,
awesome.
yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you. And close this out. And once again, I will be sharing Marianna's social media tags on the show notes. We will be reposting her so this episode, by the time it launches in 2 days, you guys will have the ability to go follow her, go to her links and purchase the book. Please support. You guys already know, as myself being a Latina podcaster, Latina single mother, you know, having the career, pushing forward with the show, we are here to support our fellow Latinas as well, Afro-Latinas and so on, and all my women of all sorts of cultures. But one thing's for sure, we want to see everybody win. So congratulations to you, Marianna. I'm so excited for you. I cannot wait for this book to go on sale. Do you want to tell my listeners where they can follow you?
Yes, go ahead and follow me on my website, actually, at www.authormariannagurrola.com.
Amazing. I will make sure to put that in the show notes. And thank you again for coming on the show. And as always, guys, this has been another week and another episode on Double Dose of Raw Talk podcast. I am your host, Miss D, and you guys will tune in next week. Bye.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And we are live on your favorite podcast streaming platform. Make sure to tell a friend to subscribe, rate, and review. Talk to you later. Bye.